Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I've been asked to offer you some perspectives on the Institute, the bicentennial of which we are celebrating this week. Presumably, as Harry indicated, because I'm the longest-standing member of the board. In the minutes allotted to this presentation, I will necessarily be brief and sketchy. And some of what I'm going to say will be a repetition of what Kåre Bremer told you. But as we are in an education establishment, some repetition cannot hurt. As we all know, repetition is mother of all knowledge. The Institute, as was indicated, was founded by Gunnar Myrdal, a towering figure in Swedish academic and political life of the first half of last century. In his youth, Myrdal made important contributions to the development of economic theory and, along with other colleagues of the so-called Stockholm School, created arguments for an active demand management policy in the beginning of the 1930s, similar to those developed by Keynes in Britain. Myrdal, in close cooperation with his wife Alva, also played an important role in developing the foundations of the Swedish welfare state. Meanwhile, internationally, Myrdal's most well-known work was his groundbreaking socio-economic analysis of the Afro-American minority in the racist environment of the US in the 1930s, An American Dilemma. In 1974, Myrdal shared the Sveriges Riksbank's prize in economic sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel with Friedrich von Hayek. Back in 1962, Myrdal succeeded in mobilizing resources from the government, the Wenner-Gren Foundation, and the then still mighty Cooperative Union of Sweden to found the Institute for International Economic Studies at this university, with a separate board. During Myrdal's time at the helm of the Institute as a director, its main focus was to support Myrdal in his last magnum opus, Asian drama. Myrdal was succeeded by Ingvar Svennilsson, another prominent member of the Stockholm School, during whose relatively short tenure the work was concentrated on structural analysis of the Swedish economy. Myrdal, I think I have to get some water. Myrdal, as sometimes happens with highly talented people, was mildly put egocentric, verging on the eccentric. He was known for monopolizing all conversations, and once an acquaintance asked him how he ever learned what other people thought, as he was talking himself all the time. "No problem," was the answer. "I have talented students who write me memos about everything I need to know." Indeed, the rest of my talk will be about, quote, talented students, which have built the standing and reputation of the Institute over the past decades. In 1971, Assar Lindbeck took over the responsibility as director and set out to develop the Institute to high international standards, both in research and in teaching. Some of the main tenets of his strategy, and here comes the quote which Kåre stole from me, from what is called the 10 Commandments of Assar Lindbeck, but I repeat them again. The goal was to reach the international frontier of economic science through publishing in high-impact journals, interact with foreign colleagues, through visiting fellowships, build your own networks in your particular area of research, concentrate and build a critical mass in a few areas, combine theoretical and methodological research with applied research. For a full version of these commandments, I can refer you to Assar's homepage, or even better for those who master Swedish, to his brilliant memoir, Economics is About Choosing, published only a couple of weeks ago. An important aspect of the life at the Institute is the pluralism and openness in different dimensions. This applies to the choice of subjects, methodological approaches, and also to the recruitment, which, like most other similar institutions around the world, makes it not only an institute of international economics, but also an institute of international economists. Today, the main way to recruit tenure-track assistant professors is at the annual meeting of the American Economic Association. Pluralism is also achieved through collaboration over the generation boundaries, not least thanks to the tutoring to a large extent taking place in open seminars with PhD students, postdocs, and professors participating in an open atmosphere. When Assa Lindbeck was succeeded as director by Lars Calmfors in 1994, the Institute had reached the desired level and had become a role model for this kind of academic milieu. Already in 1992, an international evaluation committee with Avinash Dixit, Seppo Honkapoja, and Robert Solow concluded that, quote, the most successful single center of economic research in Sweden is undoubtedly the IIES. This institute's permanent staff has a better record of publication in major international journals than the rest of the Swedish profession combined. In the field of international economics, the committee stated, the output of all this research activity is very impressive, unparalleled in Sweden and matched by few other institutions of comparable size anywhere in the world. Over the decades, the flow of foreign guests is impressive. Over 150 economists had been visiting the Institute for shorter or longer stints. Among them, I noted a number of laureates of the Economics Prize in memory of Alfred Nobel, such as Robert Mundell, Vasily Leontiev, and Amartya Sen in the 1970s. In the 80s, one finds Paul Krugman, Gary Becker, Robert Solow, Christopher Pissarides, Douglas North, Joseph Stiglitz, and Ed Phelps as visitors or participants at seminars and symposia. Other prominent economists of world renown whose name appear are, for example, Jeffrey Sachs, Mervyn King, Elhanan Helpman, Kenneth Rogoff, Martin Feldstein, Paul Romer, and today, Philippe Aghion. Well, we can note with satisfaction that Jeff, Elhanan Helpman, and Paul Romer, of course, together with Philippe Aghion, have participated in the Nobel Symposium over the last couple of days. The international standing of the IIES can be gauged also by the fact that two of its directors, Assa Lindbeck and Torsten Persson, have been elected presidents of the European Economics Association. And Torsten Persson was also elected president of the Worldwide Econometric Society. The professors at the Institute have all been affiliated with top universities in the field. It is not possible to reflect within this presentation all important research performed over the years, particularly as it covers a wide range of areas. But in order to give you a flavor of the work at the Institute, one can highlight some important dominant themes over the years. In the early 1980s, general questions and problems of the international economy is such a theme. In the second half of that decade, labor market economics became prominent with Lindbeck's and Calmfors analysis. Lindbeck, together with Dennis Noer, developed the now widely used concept of the insider-outsider dilemma in the labor market. In the 1990s, a prominent theme was monetary policy analysis under the leadership of Lars E.O. Svensson. Torsten Persson, together with Guido Tabellini, pushed the frontier of analysis in political economy forward. Harry Flam, the present director of the Institute, has produced extensive work in trade economics, including effects of the EMU on trade, and Mats Persson, important work about taxes and social insurance. In the 2000s, Per Krusell and John Hassler have concentrated upon macroeconomic analysis, and during the last 3 years on economics of climate change. Jakob Svensson and David Strömberg have both made important and widely applied contribution in respectively development economics and the role of mass media in politics. If research is a very prominent and visible activity at the IIES, teaching is equally important. Over the years, the Institute has guided a large number of students to their PhD degree and helped them on their further academic career. The Institute has become an important recruiting ground, not only for future researchers, but also for public administration, both in Sweden and internationally. The so-called third task of academia, besides research and teaching, is to spread the results of academic research to the public. Here one can safely say that the Institute has moved as far as it is possible from the ivory tower syndrome. Actually, all of its professors have been highly active in the public debate about different aspects of economic policies, be it macro or micro. At the initiative of Assa Lindbeck, the monthly journal Economics Debatt was founded in the 1970s. It became, and still is, a very important forum for qualified, popularization of economic research, and for discussion between economists on important topical issues. The involvement in current affairs, however, has not been limited to writing articles. Most of the professors at the Institute have been directly involved in policy advice. The most prominent example here is Assar Lindbeck, who over the years has been invited to counsel different governments, starting already in the 1950s. He was member of and main secretary of the Bureau Commission at the end of the 1970s, which tried to identify the structural weaknesses of the Swedish economy. 15 years later, during the crisis at the beginning of the 1990s, Lindbeck was again called upon, and together with his lieutenants Torsten Persson and Per Molander as secretary, presented the Lindbeck Commission's 113 recommendations, a roadmap for steering the Swedish economy on a more stable and higher growth path. It's clear that the improved performance of our economy is, to a high degree, due to the fact that a substantial part of the recommendations were implemented. The advisory role played by senior staff has not been limited to the domestic scene. Lindbeck was member of the Heller Commission already in the 1960s and the McCracken Commission in the 1970s. Another example is Torsten Persson, who was member of a group of prominent European economists who in 1995 argued for flexible integration towards a more effective and democratic Europe. One has this strong feeling that had politicians followed their recommendation, EU would most probably be in a quite different and better shape today. Lars Calmfors is working in the same vein as a member of the influential European Economic Advisory Group in München. A very special case of advising, albeit very discreet, is the fact that from the very beginning in 1968, the Institute has been represented on the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences Committee for the Prize in Economic Sciences. In fact, Assar Lindbeck served on the committee for no less than 25 years, out of which 15 as chair. As all the proceedings of the committee are classified for at least 50 years, it's difficult to have any opinion on the degree of influence by the Institute on the decisions of the Academy. But it is more likely that a certain osmotic effect will be seen when the archives will be open for researchers. In any case, it's quite befitting that this week's celebration includes a Nobel Symposium on Growth and Development, where we're very happy to see a group of very prominent economists discussing at the very frontier of our knowledge. In a gathering such as the one today, a natural question is, how is the Institute financed? Well, from the very beginning, as was mentioned earlier, different sources, public and private, of finance were combined, with the university budget stepwise expanded in the 1980s, but external funding always playing an important role. The balance between the, in principle, long-term government funding and temporary external research grants has been fluctuating over the years, as the Institute has continued to expand under the directorships of successively Lars Calmfors, Torsten Persson, and now Harry Flam. It is, of course, very satisfactory that the Institute is so successful in mobilizing research grants from external sources, including highly prestigious grants from the European Research Council. Well, by the way, the Council was created as a result of an EU-wide lobbying campaign in the research community, which actually was initiated here, nearby at the Academy of Sciences. But such external funding is by its very nature short-term, and today that part of our funding base has become too dominant and the permanent resources relatively too thin. But on this subject, we just heard some most welcome and gratifying news, with a very important grant from the Wallenberg Foundations and the budget resources mobilized by the Swedish government and the board of our university. These magnificent birthday gifts from the private and public sectors are, of course, to be welcomed with gratitude by the Institute, as they give stability and new possibilities for the future. And they can also be seen as mirroring the value the Institute represents for the Swedish society at large. In conclusion, we are celebrating a highly agile quinquagenarian who is clearly visible on the international academic scene and active as a source of advice for the body politic in Sweden and abroad. We all know that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. You can see new research institutes in Sweden being clearly inspired by the Institute in developing their research. Sometimes the senior staff of the Institute have been presented in the popular press as the Swedish national team in economics, quote unquote. Given the relatively high volatility of the performance of Swedish teams on the international sports arena, I think a more appropriate, certainly not more modest, but more stable metaphor for the Institute is the one which surfaced as one of the reviews of Assar's memoirs, where the Institute was presented as the jewel in the crown of social sciences in Sweden. So, today we have good reasons to congratulate the Institute and wish it all possible good health and continued success for the future. Thank you.